Laura, you ready? Yes. All right. This meeting of the Centennial School Board is called to order at 6:31 p.m. on October 26, 2022, and a quorum is present. Hello and welcome, everyone. It's great to see you all here. First up, let's see, we'll approve the minutes. Do we approve the agenda? Yeah. Let's approve the agenda first. The meeting agenda has been distributed in your board pack. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve the agenda.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Fantastic. That was a unanimous vote for the approval of the meeting agenda. Next up, let's do the, do I have this? No. We'll jump forward to the approval of minutes. The previous minutes draft has been distributed in your board pack. Are there any corrections or amendments? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the agenda
Second?
or the
The
minutes?
meeting minutes?
The minutes. Motion to approve the minutes.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 All right, previous minutes have been approved. There was nothing that came up in the public forum, other than we do have currently 3 candidates that put in for the vacant board position, and so we'll hear more about that coming. Next up, we've got reports.
I'm sorry. I just had a
please.
brief question. When is the approval, is the application period closing the 4th of November, first Friday before the next board meeting?
It closes the Wednesday before the Friday before the board meeting, so the Wednesday of that week, that'll give us a couple of days
Second,
before.
maybe.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Fantastic. Next up, we've got a visitor with us, Karen Wolfgang from the Centennial Neighborhood Emergency Team. Are they?
I don't see Karen in the gallery. I was checking earlier. She has the invitation, but I don't see her there. I don't have her contact information at the ready to see if she's available and able to jump on.
Well,
I
let's.
wonder if we want to jump to the
Yep. Let's
next
just jump to the
agenda
next report.
Yep.
Division 22 report.
I'm clicking and it's not letting me in. I've been trying to make you a panelist. James, could you?
Let me see if I can pull that report up and project it. There we go. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you make me a co-host? Thank you.
All right. Okay. Good evening, Board. This evening, I'll review our 2021-22 Division 22 standards. Did you want to say anything, James, or?
Yeah, I would just say that Division 22 standards is a reflection of the various ORS codes that govern how school districts operate. And so as you'll see in the presentation, there are a whole variety of different standards that we are responsible for reporting on. You'll see it says 21-22, and it's not a typo. It's because we're reporting on our compliance for the prior school year. So this used to be a presentation that was delivered in February. in the last couple of years, the state said, this needs to be moved up closer to the previous school year so that any corrections can be addressed in a quicker fashion. And so this is our report for last year's standards.
Okay. And we'll begin with just some content from the state. So Division 22 standards are basically the instructional standards that the state legislature has deemed required. And so each year, as Superintendent Owen said, we review those. The reason why we have these Division 22 standards, really for me, when I look at the second bullet, that really captures making sure that we're providing adequate instruction based on those standards. And I would say that it is the concept of it being a floor, not a ceiling. Districts can do more, but at the minimum, we have to cover the letter of the law. It also offers us an opportunity to check in as changes are made. These are the four main areas. So if you look at the blue, the green, the orange, and maroon.
Which slide are we on?
Oh, I'm sorry, James. Go to the next one.
Okay.
I'll
thank you.
signal you. Yeah. So teaching and learning, health and safety, district performance and accountability, and human resources and staffing. They've also, they've got some sub-bullets underneath. So curriculum instruction, assessment, program and service requirements, diploma, all fit under teaching and learning. And then there's some sub-bullets under the health and safety as well. These, and you can, I think, click through those, James. These are just examples under each area. It is not the list in its entirety. There are about, I think I counted 59 standards. So, for example, under curriculum instruction, just under the adoption materials itself, there's 4. So many of them have more than one area. Next slide. So for us, you can go to the next one, James, too. Looking at 2021-22, first, the state has put forth a couple waivers, so we did not need to report on those. One is the assessment of essential skills, and that is suspended through 23-24. They're in the process of revising that. Kindergarten assessment, also, we have a waiver for 21-22. They have revised that assessment, and this year and next year, so through 2024, they'll be piloting. And so you can anticipate then 24-25 that we'll be getting back to the kindergarten assessment. In addition, that they've made are operational plans to be submitted on particular process and forms that they would like, and that has been completed. Next slide, James. There's 3 steps in this process. After we figure out which standards we're compliant with, we report to you prior to November 1st. We'll post it on our website, the report from the board, and then we have to submit an assurance form by mid-November. So that's pretty much the timeline. So for us in Centennial School District, 98% of our Division 22 requirements are met. There is one area we're not compliant in, and that is the human sexuality education. And that is a district-wide human sexuality education plan that must be approved by the board and then also renewed every 2 years. And so as hard as I've looked, I have not been able to find that since I started a year ago. So we'll be, I'll talk about our plans for that in a couple minutes. So, any questions at this point?
So, was there one previously?
I believe.
Okay.
At least that's what I was told, and I haven't been able to find it.
There's no way it would be in like old board meeting minutes or something that the board had to approve it?
I asked Pam to look,
Okay.
to do a
Alright,
doc on that.
Y'all are good at problem
So-
solving.
we researched, and there's previous curriculum directors that I know that Mo has reached out to as well, and for some reason,
Definitely the last two.
yeah.
So, but we will right that ship, for sure. So the corrective actions from last year, so this is reporting on 2021. Standard 2223 Healthy and Safe Schools Plan, that has been completed by Director Southerton's department, and so that's been submitted and approved. In terms of 2355 instructional materials adoptions, during 2021, which was really still on the heels of COVID, we did not adopt for world language, and then the virtual academy came in late last year, and they expected us to do an adoption there too. So we were able to secure both of those adoptions in the spring, which you all approved. Questions? So corrective action for the for the comprehensive sexuality education plan, I anticipate starting this in January as we start to wind down on the strategic plan, and I'll be coordinating with Adolescents and Communities Together ACT. They're one of our partners that we work with to support our teachers with instruction, and that's out of the MESD, and so we'll be working with them to create a plan which will include a diverse group of folks coming together. Between March and May, we'll work with the committee to draft that plan, and my hope is that I bring that forward in June for approval. And then looking ahead, so this time next year, we'll also report on PE requirements for middle school increasing to 225. I can tell you as of this year, we're already there. Operational plans for 22-23 school year. I don't know, Paul, if you have anything to add to that? Nope, we're good? Okay. And then the agreements entered into with voluntary organizations is that organizations must adopt and implement policies prohibiting discrimination, maintain complaint process with sanctions, and administer an annual survey. So that's what we'll report on next year that will be added. This, thanks to my presentation a couple weeks ago, we'll be up to date with the Talented and Gifted program. So, questions or comments?
I have one. Are we out of, I want to make sure I'm understanding this right, with the human sexuality education, is there something in there that's throwing Centennial out of compliance, or just the fact we're missing the plan and we need to create another one?
That's a great question. So for sure, we don't have the plan. And then in this process, we'll also want to ensure that we're following the law in terms of the requirements for teaching human sexuality. An example of that would be medically accurate information that we're sharing with kids. So we want to make sure that we're doing that, and that would happen in that process.
I clicked that link when I was looking at that, looked at that. Quite lengthy from ODE about
Yes, it
that,
is.
and that was one of the things they mentioned was being medically accurate, so that's what Centennial is going to work to improve on.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I have another question on that. Is there training that teachers go through who are then going to be presenting this material? And how is that followed through? Is that
Absolutely.
part of the plan?
Yes. Yeah, and so once we shore up the plan, that will include professional development to make sure that teachers have what they need to instruct.
Great,
So,
thank you.
yep.
Vision 22, when we're talking about, some of the things that have been set aside
Mm.
during the pandemic, where are we, where do you anticipate, with your crystal ball,
Yeah.
are things going to come up mid-year where you're going to have to then try to get into compliance? Do you see things coming to you
That's a good question.
that direction and, that you're going to be able to jump into it? I worry about the fact that, we suspended things for a while, right? As needed. Obviously, this pendulum sickness week
Yeah. From my perspective, what I see is ODE being much more responsive in getting us the information. So for example, the fact that they've already listed what we'll be looking at next year as additions, that's very comforting. If you're referencing the essential skills, we're a couple years out with that, and they're continue to give us updates on where they're at with that. So it really shouldn't be a surprise of when those things happen. Same thing with the kindergarten assessment. We know where they're at. The assessment has been created. They're spending the next 2 years piloting. And so we can look for implementation in 24, 25. So what I see happening is they're looking forward, I don't know if more frequently, but I see them looking forward to give us that notification.
Are we part of a pilot for the kindergarten assessments? Or
You know, I
no?
knew that question was going to
Okay.
come up. I believe somebody has volunteered. I'd have to follow up on that. Thank you.
That's it? All right, that's great. Thank you so much. Do we notice if Karen Wolfgang is in, yeah, nope, okay.
She's Oregon Climate Action Hub.
She has a screen that's just saying host is waiting for the host to start the.
She did, but on the second bit, for the executive session, I did that same thing.
I think she's Oregon Climate Action Hub, so if you can promote that account.
They're the organ. Is that okay?
Hi, Karen.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Hey. Sorry about that. I was on the link from the calendar invitation, not from the board book.
No worries, we're so glad that you're here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And just to clarify, how much time do you want me to, do you want me to just like really race through this or 5-10 minutes?
10 minutes, you know?
10 minutes? Okay. Oh, wow.
Uh-oh.
Cool. Yeah, that's fun. All right. So do I have sharing? Yes, I do. So I have let me know if I can share my screen. I have a little slideshow, but it looks like participant screen sharing is disabled.
She's going to
currently.
make you co-host here momentarily.
Cool.
You should be
All
good.
right. Good to go. Okay. All right. Are you seeing the beautiful Centennial Net logo?
Yep.
Woo! All right. So I'm here tonight. As you know, I'm a Centennial parent and volunteer in a number of capacities. I'm also the team leader for our Centennial Neighborhood Emergency Team. So the NET program is our Portland Community Emergency Response Team, which is a federal FEMA program. And we have NET in Portland for reasons. But we train from the city, and then we deploy typically through the city as well. So they will send an all call, and any net across the city who's available to participate will respond directly through the city. We train as a neighborhood, and then if a really disruptive event were to happen, we would also get together as a neighborhood, and I'll talk about that a little bit when I get to our operations plan. But just as I want this to mostly be an introduction, and if you have, questions or want to engage more, which I hope you do, then I think we can follow up after the fact. So we are open to everybody who lives, works, plays, and or just admires Centennial neighborhood. And yes, we're open to Centennial Portland and Centennial Gresham. It is a Portland program, but we have been given the green light to train Gresham folks as well. We also don't have a lot of active NET teams in the Far East neighborhoods. So Pleasant Valley doesn't have an active NET team. Glen Fair doesn't have an active NET team. And we welcome all those folks. We also welcome people who are trained through the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management program that I mentioned previously, or people who are not trained yet, some of whom may never be trained. So we like to welcome everybody because our focus is building community resilience And we recognize there's a little bit of a misfit between the city's, train on a neighborhood level and the possibility in the future that we might ever have to deploy as a neighborhood emergency team and cover all of our 25,000 people in the Centennial neighborhood, let alone any of the other neighborhoods that we welcome to train with us. So we really want to bring everybody to the table and have been focused in our first 2.5 years on building relationships with neighborhood organizations. And so this is like really, really, really exciting to be here at the board to do that. My slideshow is literally who, what, when, where, why, and how. So what do? We do training, but most of that is centralized through the city. We do skills practice like radio drills and preparedness activities. We do community building. So we did a pop-up event this summer selling plants and handing out free ice cream with the Centennial Community Association. And also did a party on Portland party at the end of August. So we were at Park Lane Park, running around and having a lot of fun and eating really good food. We do have meetings on a regular basis. And then the deployment that we would do if the city really was not functioning in any ways that we typically expect it to function, would be to gather as many members of our team and spontaneous unaffiliated volunteers as possible and head at this point to Park Lane Park. That would be our primary staging area. And we'd set up our tents there and sort of follow our guidance from the city as to how to assess damage and hook people up with resources as we would be able. A little bit of background: we started as a team in March of 2020. That is a coincidence with something else that started in March of 2020. So we have only done our monthly team meetings and now our monthly community engagement committee meetings. And most of the presentations and other things that we've done virtually so far. And I mentioned a couple of the exceptions. One other notable exception to that virtual only format is coming up. So we're going to be meeting in person on November 17th at Park Lane Reformed Church at 6:30 in the evening. And we're hoping to get a big crowd there. We're going to have go bag bingo and some refreshments and just really trying to activate people, not necessarily even on household preparedness or emergency preparedness, but getting connected with each other and building connections within the neighborhood. That's why we're doing the work that we're doing. It's because we have fun doing it, and we recognize that there's a need for interconnectivity, especially coming out of the 2 years of pandemic-ness. We need to be able to support each other, and that starts with knowing each other, and of course, being sort of prepared generally for what may come. Is our goal, whether that's a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake or other pandemic type issues. We want people to connect with each other and therefore have that resilience and community connection to handle any unforeseens that come down the pipeline. So this is the pop-up event in the at Park Lane Park. I'm just getting used to the staging area that we would activate in the event of a citywide deployment. But really, what I want to talk with you about is, as we go forward, what might be a good fit in terms of connecting the district with our team, in terms of sharing communications, in terms of maybe connecting directly with the schools themselves. I have lots of ideas and obviously plenty of enthusiasm to bring to the work that we're doing, and a growing team as well. So I'd be really happy to take any questions you might have now, or, or like I said, continue that conversation going forward.
Thank you so much, Karen, for that. Are there questions at this time? I'll open it up. No? Go ahead, David. Director Lynn.
Hey, what's up, Karen? How's it going?
Hey, what's up,
Haven't seen
David?
you since the
Good.
last meetings. Yeah, I think this is a really important issue, and I would love to see, maybe with the strategic planning or with other ways going forward, how, each building has its own operations plan, and each employee has been taken through a process of considering what they would do in terms of a catastrophic earthquake event, and how would they get home, how would they communicate with family. And a lot of the trainings that are offered through CNET really help you, kind of go through that stuff. Like, what would you do in these various different events? Who would you be able to help? Would you need help? Would you have the things that you need for your pets, your kids, your neighbors? And then would you be able to be activated to help others in an event? So, I think it's really important that everybody, kind of do this in their own neighborhood. And I think it's important as a district that we look at this.
Thank you, Director Lynn. Other questions or comments? I agree with Director Lynn. I think that at the very least, we can work to communicate these opportunities out with the families in our district so that they're able to participate. I think that this is definitely something that we could help support. And I want to come. I want to get my family ready.
And they have cool exercises. You can like sign up to be like a dead body in like a mass casualty event or something.
Oh
If
my
that
God.
That sounds fun to you.
Simulated. Simulated.
I actually, that will make my teenager want to come along, I'm pretty sure. A perfect role for him. No. Thank you so much, Karen. I definitely look forward to working with you more in the future.
Yeah, definitely myself as well. And if you are interested in, having any trainings or, district engagement on like reunification planning, that's not something that we do as a team, but I can put you in touch with those, those folks who do. So reunification planning for building by building, what happens if there's a severe disruption. Continuity planning in general, like business continuity planning and organizational continuity planning, is something that PBEM offers through other resources, not just the NET team, but so we could be a conduit to some of that other training and resource development as well. And then if the district were able to provide nonprofits in the neighborhood with free peach jar, for example, or if there's a better mechanism these days for getting information out, I would be happy to, take advantage of those. And I would love to have more Centennial parents and families and everybody's be signed up. I think one last idea is that at various points, PBEM has had more and less capacity for offering NET training to high schools. So bringing NET into the high school and offering that as a program for high school students is something that PBEM has in the past been able to do, and I bet that they could do it again if we got a little crew of folks together who might be interested in taking that training. It can be really transformative.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Cool.
Oh, yep.
Just going to say, can we make sure we get the operations plan sent to James, and can you send that around to the board
Yeah,
in the
absolutely.
post-meeting thing? Great, thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks, David.
I was just going to ask if they're a community partner or if they're set up as one with the district.
They will be.
Yeah, I don't think they were on that list, but let's get an
Because I think
MOU.
that mends or makes it, opens up a lot of the options.
Yep.
Is making that happen.
I think too, also finding a way to share with our other community partners this resource, and just, I think that the more of the community that's prepared in the case of a catastrophic event, the better we'll all be. So
Exactly.
thank you so much, Karen. I really appreciate you bringing this to us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the
Absolutely.
opportunity.
Karen, good to see you, and we'll reach out. And as you were saying, the communications piece that I was already writing down, that we'll have our Chief Communications Officer, Albert Rosales Correa, reach out to you just in terms of how we might be able to partner in publicizing the work that you're doing. And then also just an awareness piece for the board. We have our standard response protocol that is uniform across the district. We have ongoing training that's done at the district and then within the schools as well. Reunification is a part of that, and so are tabletop exercises, which are a lot of the scenarios that we're talking about as well. We have a safety and security lead position, which is out on the street now. It's posted, and hopefully once that position is hired for, we'll have even more enhanced coordination of our safety and security efforts, which will help provide an even better conduit for organizations like Karen's to be able to have synergy with regard to the work that they're doing in the community and the work that we're doing in the school district. So if a catastrophic event does come up, there's tighter coordination in terms of how we respond. So appreciate you coming and sharing with us, Karen. It's good to see you.
Always good to see you all.
Yep.
Have a great night. I'm going to pop off. You might
Yep,
look at the
thank
kids
you.
watching TV in the background. All right. Thank
Bye.
you all.
Do you want to introduce the next report?
All right, we are pleased to have from the East Coast, Lauren Klafke. She's here from Performance Fact. She came in specifically for us tonight to be able to share an activity with us with regard to our strategic planning. Before she presents, we wanted to kind of frame this out for you, and I'll cue up our video. I don't know if you saw in the superintendent's update on Friday, there was a video and a landing page that was developed by Chief Communications Officer Correa. And we wanted to share this before we dig in. It works better when there's sound.
Every day at Centennial, employees across the district work together to ensure that each learner receives the resources they need to thrive in our schools. From year to year, at Centennial, we want to make sure that we live by our mission. Our commitment is guided by our mission, vision, and key priorities from our strategic plan, Destination 2023. A lot has changed since Destination 2023 was established 5 years ago. Much has been accomplished in the midst of many challenges. Now, it's time to engage our students, staff, families, and community to develop a new strategic plan. This plan will not only elevate and articulate district goals and strategic planning, it will meet the requirements of the Oregon Department of Education's Aligning for Student Success Integrated Guidance. This plan will be developed to answer a few key questions. Where are we now? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? This process will require deep and collective thinking by diverse groups of people from various backgrounds from across the district to develop our strategic plan. In Centennial, we believe that ethnicity, economic circumstance, primary language, and special needs do not predict academic success. Centennial aspires to be a district where all schools perform at the highest level and students receive what they need to thrive. What would a district like that look like? What would it feel like? This year, Centennial is creating a new 4-year plan that will provide us with a roadmap to success for all students. Families, how can we get to work together to ensure that the learning experience for your students is rigorous, inclusive, and joyful? Students, how can we make sure that you are academically ready to move from elementary to middle school and middle school to high school, future ready beyond graduation? Educators, how can we ensure that each student in your care reaches their full potential? Community partners, how can we work together to ensure that students are empowered and graduate with the knowledge, skills, and disposition to engage in an evolving world? This strategic planning process is an opportunity to gather multiple perspectives as we work to build a learning environment where our students can thrive. There are many ways to participate in strategic planning through committees, surveys, and community forums. To learn more about this process, please visit our website, www.csd28j.org, and click on the strategic planning link.
All right, kudos to Chief Correa for his work putting that together. And then you'll also see that on the main page of our website, it has a banner which then links to this page. And it provides a strategic planning overview so that people can be able to come back and reflect on the activities that we're doing. Chief Correa has already voiced over the video in Spanish as well, so that's available too. And so basically our intent here is there's a lot of activities that are going to be heating up here in November. We've had the student voice focus groups. We have the community forums coming up in shortly after the new year. We have the core planning team. We have the instructional focus team that's getting underway. And a lot of those discrete elements of there's this team and there's that team, how does this all fit together, can get a little bit lost in the shuffle, I think. And so our intent between the video and the website is to provide some alignment, coherence, and an overall framework for people to understand this is our strategic planning process in whole. These are the elements that it consists of, and for people to be able to refer to the various activities and committees that are available. So one of our communication elements, not the only one, but as we're getting things kick-started, we thought it was important to provide just an overall frame. All of that said, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chief, I keep saying Chief with Korea, with Director Callahan and Lauren to go ahead and share with us tonight's activities.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here in person and be able to have this opportunity to engage with you. I'm looking forward to a rich conversation regarding some of the elements for the strategic planning process. In particular, tonight we're going to spend some time on the portrait of a graduate. So I'm looking forward to that. I want to do a little bit of framing and regrounding just to reconnect about what is going to be the process we're undertaking over the course of the next several months. Make sure that folks feel clear and can ask any questions regarding process before we get into some of the content work. And so to begin, I'm going to share my screen if I can get that honor and privilege. I have it. Yes, thank you. Let's see how that works. And now I don't have to ask you if you can see it because I'm here in the room. Let's see. Great. Okay, so when we think about the role that our team plays from Performance Fact, I just want to share to really ground in how we view our work and what sets us apart, we think, from some different experiences that some people might have had with strategic planning in the past. We see our role primarily as facilitators, and we take that role very seriously. As facilitators, we're not here to command or control the process. We're not, if we tried, it wouldn't work, even if we wanted to. But we do direct. And so the way that we direct is by providing experiences and opportunities for the community to engage in activities and share and lift up their thoughts and perspectives and come to a mutual understanding of what the direction should be going forward in the strategic plan. So your district, and I commend you for undertaking this, this process. Sometimes superintendents and districts will decide, or boards will decide, to squirrel away with maybe 20 people in a room, and they'll cook up a really beautiful plan, and it might be exceptional, and then they'll kind of come down the mountain like Moses with the 10 Commandments and say, let's roll. And you can imagine how that goes in a system. But this process is designed to be pretty much the antithesis of that. So our process is grounded in our premise. And I start with this because this undergirds how we actually align and are going to support the development of the plan itself. And our premise, it's pretty straightforward. It's that everything is okay with the kids. The kids are all right. If we take a look at students and how students are performing now or how they're demonstrating their growth and development, it's really the result of the adult practices that have supported students in getting there. So if students have learned something well, they must have been taught well, in whichever respect or the way that they needed to in order to learn what they needed to learn, whether it's tying your shoes or whether it's calculus. And so if we accept that as being true, right, that they must have been taught well, then we have to accept the corollary, that if a student has not yet learned something, right, they may have not yet been taught well enough in the way that they need in order to be successful, okay? And so what we see in terms of student outcomes is the result, it's the effect of the adult practices. And those adult practices aren't just teaching practices or the leadership practices at the site or the superintendent. It's also the organizational practices, the systems, the structures. And the board, just like the teachers and everyone in the whole system, has a role to play in that. And so if we want to have transformed or improved outcomes for all of the students in Centennial School District, then we have to continually look at improving the adult practices. And so that's really what undergirds and drives how we're going to go through the process of strategic planning. The second slide that I want to share, which is a really essential slide here, is that planning, we suggest the primary purpose is really about alignment. And a misalignment happens all the time. You may recall the slide from my last presentation. We sort of hammer it home every time. But misalignment happens all the time, and it's a normal thing, as particularly in organizations and cars and our bodies, right? And we can still function, but we don't function optimally. And so what we want to do through the process of strategic planning over the next several months is to move from the circle on the left to the circle on the right. And two things I want to point out about the diagram. The first is that it's not about adding new arrows. So we're all still kind of the same folks who are going to be moving together as one. It's not putting more things in or fancy programs or, in design in that way. It's really about how do we orient all of us towards a shared goal and work together. And we really believe that the power lies within. And the power to solve kind of the entrenched and difficult problems that you might be facing, and all of the beautiful strengths that are here to build upon are all here within the system. And so it's just going through this process that we can move together. Let's see, there we go. So where are we? We have gotten into stage 2. The last time I zoomed in from wherever I was, I must have been in Vermont, I think it was late. And so we got past the phase that everyone was ready to go. So the team has been amazing. I was sharing with the team earlier that this district is one of the most planned ahead districts that I've ever worked with. Like, we had our calendar set way in advance from, I think, pretty much, there's one other district, but that district has, I think, 200 schools, so they kind of needed to be far in advance. So I just want to commend the team for the organization and the thoughtfulness and detail for which they've planned the process. So right now, we're in phase 2, which is kind of where are we now? And this is going to, we've gathered data. The team has put together data. We're processing it. We've done focus groups. We're processing that data. And we're going to bring all of that back as we kick off the planning teams in just about 2 weeks, I think. Yeah. So the process we've designed is intentional to engage the diverse voices of the community. You'll see the different constituents represented in this image and this diagram. We want to include, it's really important to include the diverse voices and perspectives and have people meaningfully engaged in the process if you want them to meaningfully commit to supporting the plans coming to fruition. The way that we're doing this is through a series of teams, and I know that many of you are going to be on some teams, and I'm excited to have that opportunity to engage with you. At the hub is the core planning team. This team is, by design, the most diverse team in terms of having a broad range of stakeholders in that setting. And the core planning team is the major generator of material. They're the ones who spend the longest, the most number of days and hours on all of the various activities that we're going to do, and they're going to be building and generating the material. That's going to be feeding out to the various teams that you see around it, and they're also responsible for integrating the feedback, right, that comes from those teams. So where are we? These are the various other teams. We mentioned student voice. We've already started, but we'll also have an ongoing student voice team. We have our instructional focus team that's going to be kicking off next week as well. And I believe the alignment team is kicking, well, the calendar's coming up, so I won't misspeak. So we have all these teams are kind of scheduled out. You'll see what the cadence is. But every team engages in the same process and in the similar activities, just not to the same depth. Okay, so while the core planning team might spend a day or half a day on data, the community forum might spend a half hour on sort of seeing the synthesis of some of that data. But we want everybody to be moving along and following that, building the same story and the same narrative as we go through. So you have a unique position in that the board will be participating as team members, right? And in that position, we suggest you might be sitting next to a student, and you and that team have equal voice, right, to the student. But the board team comes together to get updates, to provide some thoughts. But you ultimately are the final, decision makers on the approval of the plan. And so we want to bring you along the process, make sure your questions are answered. But we ask you also to let the process kind of run through till we get to the end, and have all stakeholders engaged. This is where we are in our planning calendar. Doesn't have every single date and team, but you'll see we started after tonight. This will turn green for our engagement here, and the core planning team, as you see, will be kicking off next week. Okay, I think that's it for process. So I want to pause there on process before we dig into doing some work, and I will take questions, and what I can't answer, I will defer to Director Kelly.
You said the core planning team's next.
It's in 2 weeks. Thank you. Yes. It's like it's actually, I think, 3 weeks. I know, I was like, oh my gosh, wait. Yeah, sorry, but I misspoke. The 14th and 15th are the core planning team kickoff dates. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm interested in the kind of iterative process of this. The student voice team has already met twice. Are we going to get kind of updates or results from those as it happens to kind of inform us as we're doing these other team activities? Or is it just kind of like everybody's working and we all just dump everything at the end? And
No, yeah, thank you for the question and the clarification. Student voice takes a little bit of different, we call it student voice team for sharing the touch points that we have directly just with student groups, but it actually transforms at this point. What we've done is done our focus groups and gathering data, and once we have the data booklet, the comprehensive data booklet that's complete, all of the teams will see that. The board will have access to all of those pieces and as we're going through the process. And at our update, so if our next board meeting is on December 14th, you'll be seeing both having a chance to experience some of what we've done, but also see the work to date. So at every meeting, you'll have a chance to see the work to date and comment on it. So you'll have it to be able to chime in and see how it's evolving. But it will evolve. So that's where we kind of hold let's keep giving feedback and see how this grows and shapes as we go through. The student voice team going forward is going to be a separate team that's the same group of students who's going to be meeting and engaging in the similar process of the data. And they're going to be reviewing the student voice focus group data. They're going to be reviewing the survey. So they're really engaging as their own separate strand. So that's kind of where the pivot happens in this here.
Did that address your question?
I think until the very end,
I got
the last
confused.
sentence, I kind of thought it was kind of a little like, no, you're not going to see the results till the end, but everything else seemed to make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you'll see. I mean, it will evolve. It's an iterative process, and you'll see it at each step of the way.
Okay.
So you'll have a chance to comment on it and provide your input, yeah.
I had a question also. Sorry. I had a question also about student voice.
Yes, sir.
Is it? All right.
The mute up here at
Where-
But are we, is student voice representative of all 3 levels of education within the district and like a variety of students?
Great.
Is it, or is it, looking at the students that will be impacted over the next 5 years? You know, like, are the high school students, I mean, a lot of them won't be here for the strategic planning. So do you gear it one way or the other, or is that a factor in who you select?
Yeah, that's great. I'll start, and then, do you want to jump in? Okay, I'll start. Yeah, you can jump in. So that's a great observation because, regarding the high schoolers, because some of them were like, we meet with them, they're like, wait, I'm on my way out, I'm a senior. And what we talked about was, creating and preparing, like laying the foundation for the generations to come and the impact that you can have, because they've also had the most the time in the district and experienced it as it is. So to answer your question, we've met with elementary through high school students. We had elementary student focus groups, and we also had middle school, and we had a high school focus group. So we've covered the range. It was, the ask was to have a diverse group, a diverse representation of the student body, but it still is a focus group. So, there were, the size of the groups were about, I think it was like about 5 or 6 kids from each elementary school. Yeah, 5 or 6 kids from each elementary school participated. And at the middle schools, I think we had, I don't have the numbers because I haven't crunched it all yet, but we had probably about 25 middle schoolers. And the high schoolers, like 70 people were there, and it was great. Not so much focus groups, so we pivoted and got like lots of input in a different and new way, but it was a lot of excitement in that room, and so we had a lot of great engagement. So they're in the process of putting together the student voice team.
And the focus there is really 7th through 12th. And my understanding is it's a fairly rigorous process. And so to expect elementary students or 6th graders even, it would be a bit much. So we're going with the 7th through 12th, and I'm working with Marin and Nathan and Jeb in terms of identifying those students. Still prioritizing diverse groups and wanting to make sure that we get the right people in the seats.
Welcome. Okay, any other questions? Yeah.
Question. I'm curious where parents fit into, which team they kind of fit into, where you're getting that information.
So their parents are in really 2 or 3 different places. So one place is as participants in the core planning team. So there are parents who are invited to be a part of that group. And the other place where we see parent participation is in the community forum. We should really call it parent and community forum. So there's parent participation through that vehicle. Sometimes we also, between staff and or alignment team members, you may have folks who have wear multiple hats, but those are the 2 primary groups.
What I would add to that as well, and what you don't see reflected there, and Lauren, feel free to boot me under the table if I get too far astray, but what is there is in the range of January, February, we will also be doing some intentional focus groups beyond what's here with historically underserved student groups and families of those students, which helps to drill down more specifically, and also is a call out in the ODE plan requirements as well. So that's something that we will be working internally and with MESD on helping us facilitate those more focused engagements. And we will be working kind of outside the performance fact realm, but replicating activities that they are doing on our own, if that makes sense. And Director Callahan may have more to add.
I would just add that currently we've sent out, or we'll be sending out 25 invitations for the core planning team for parents.
And then I think you started to go there, but I'm just going to finish. So that means that those sessions that will be for the historically underrepresented groups, there'll be some that are like facilitated in Spanish so that those families can have their.
That's the idea.
Great.
Yeah, and that's the idea, is that you would have a focus group that has more of a concentration of a student population focal group, so that you can get more in-depth conversation around the specific needs
Great.
around that particular group of students and their family and community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Lynn?
Would the community team still get invited to those?
The community, what do you mean, the
The
community team?
the community team, the people on the community team, part of the strategic planning?
The core planning team?
No, I thought it was the three.
Forum.
The
Yeah.
community for, so those would be basically like, I don't know how you say, but those would be community forums for specific groups of students and their families. And I think what will help drive that is us looking at the outcome data that we have for students, whether it be academics, attendance, behavioral, and it helps us lead to where are the students in our system that are not being as successful as we need them to be, and how do we need to engage them specifically to better elicit what their needs are. The concern is if we have the community forum as a whole, that could potentially dilute the input that we're getting from specific focal groups that we're wanting to engage specifically.
Oh, no, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. I want to go. I just want to watch.
Oh,
I
got
don't
it.
even need to participate. I just,
Director
If-
Lynn, you're welcome to show up,
great. Please send me the invitation.
if that's what we were saying. Yeah, but we wouldn't want to like have a,
Yeah. That's good clarification.
That does add kind of a question. There's a lot of dates, a lot of teams, et cetera. We talked in August about the division of duties and responsibilities. Roger wasn't there at that time, so I'm not sure how he would maybe like to be able to participate. We'll have another board member coming on soon. That person should be invited to participate. And I was just checking my calendar to see where I was on the list and the list that you sent to us as to who had volunteered. I just think with one of the time we need to recommit everybody who said that they're doing what they're gonna do, because lives change. And I know I said I'd be a backup if necessary, if life changed, so maybe we just need to touch base in an email somewhere just to recommit and make sure all of these things are the way they're supposed to be.
Very good.
And do you want me to start putting all this stuff on my calendar, or did you want to send out? Or did you want to send all those out as?
they're in process. We have all of that information
Got it. Thank
to Director Callahan's team, who is in the process of sending those calendar invitations out.
Okay. Those are great questions. I'm really excited. So let me dig in a little bit here to some of the work. So the process that we suggest is we start with data, and we ask the question, what data do we have? Like, what can we learn about the current state? How are the children, right? How can we learn about how things are going for the children in our system? And so we suggest, and we kind of present many times data out of considering like a room full of 20 kiddos or students or young adults, depending on who you're talking to. How many of them are represented by different factors? So here is a profile of the Centennial student district-wide by race and ethnicity. So out of 20 students in a room, you would have 3 students from an Asian background, you'd have 1 student who's Black, you'd have 6 Hispanic or Latinx students, 8 white students, 1 multiracial student, and then the equivalent of just about one for American Indian or Pacific Islander would kind of make up. You have a very diverse student body, and they're amazing. I get the honor and privilege of interacting with the students. It's kind of one of the best parts of my job. So I really enjoyed connecting with them. And your school communities did a good job of ensuring that the student focus group represented at least the race and ethnicity of the community. So I commend you for that. Let's see, there we go. There's another way of thinking about this, the federal programs that students or families might qualify. So out of 20 students, you have about 3 students who are experiencing disabilities. You have 8 students qualified as ever English learners. So students who have ever or are currently in the process of learning English as a second language. And 12 out of your 20 students come from families who are experiencing poverty, and this is from qualifying for free or reduced lunch. So that's just some of the diversity, but the reason we share this is because as we look at data for your district through the process, we're going to be looking at how it overall, if we take a look at how everyone's doing in one full swoop, this is the district-wide, but we're also going to slice the data by these various, in these various ways so that we can better understand, are there any consequential differences in experience or outcome for student groups in the district. And so that's part of how we think about and look at the data. What we are going to be utilizing, so the data that we're going to be looking at through the process, so we sort of talked about this data booklet it's in process. The student voice is going to be the student survey that students took in spring of last year. As well as the focus group data and write-ups from the focus groups that we held just a couple weeks ago. What was it last? It was last week, or 2 weeks ago. I've been back and forth. So that's the student voice data. The outcome data we're going to look at is, we don't have the kindergarten assessment, right? As you just heard, that it's been suspended. So we won't have, that's going to be a missing piece, but it's something that we suggest be thought about and considered because it's an important indicator to be focusing in on, looking at attendance, high school GPA, achievement, and all in the core subjects, graduation rates. And then we also look at access data. So not just how well students are doing or what the outcomes look like, but how much access do they have to opportunity in the system. And so this is going to be looking at suspensions and expulsions. It's going to look at overall enrollment, experience, teachers' experience, dual course enrollment, et cetera. So this is just kind of to give you a sense of all of the pieces that we're going to be diving into. Not tonight, but as part of the process. The reason we organize this data this way is that we, Performance Fact, we build this framework around this report from NASM, which is the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. In 2019, they produced a report that talked about monitoring or paying attention to educational equity. And we had this question of, besides the fact that my CEO and president is an engineer by training, what are engineers and medicine folks and scientists talking about educational equity? So it sparked our interest. And so I wanted to just kick off. This is one of the quotes from the report. And I want to give a moment. I don't know if there's anybody in the board member or district staff who would like to read the quote out loud for us. We're going to have a chance to hear it. I know it's going to get interactive.
If the ladder of educational opportunity rises high at the door of some youth and scarcely rises at the doors of others, while at the same time formal education is made a prerequisite to occupational and social advancement, then education may become the means, not of eliminating race and class distinctions, but of deepening and solidifying.
Thank you. Just wanted to open it up. Any thoughts or observations, reactions, kind of seeing that? or
Was
hearing-
that written today or in 1947?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was from the Commission on Higher Education from 1947.
I don't think we've,
Yeah,
yeah. It could have also been written today.
right. Yeah. So when we talk about the work, right, that we're going to be doing and kind of teasing things apart, we're going to be looking at some persistent challenges, right, within the system of education. And so just because we haven't figured it out yet doesn't mean that we can't, right? But also just take, take heart in the fact that there are roads and pathways forward to become a place that doesn't deepen these distinctions. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, kind of blew my mind. So I'll skip this. You have the slides to look at. This is just kind of, these are their domains. It explains why we look at data by outcome and access. A lot of times people will just focus on outcomes and not pay attention to how the system's set up to ensure that students can access their education. And so that's a key part of what we're going to be looking at. We use the word equity. We're just defining, this is performance facts definition. Okay, so this is performance facts definition, but I wanted to share it because sometimes it comes up as a question. And we just talk about ensuring equitable access so that we can have equal outcomes for all children. That equitable access to the resources, opportunities that guarantee fair, just, and affirming experiences and produce equal outcomes for every student without exception. Same high bar for all students that we want in the system. But we have to think about how we provide the access that each student needs to get there. So the process, I mentioned data. What data do we have? That's kind of where in this is the process that the planning teams will go through. Then we start to talk about what does the data tell us, and then we'll have our solution. This is the structure of the plan itself. When it is finally finished, at the end of the process, these are the three major components of the plan. At the center is student learning. You have, as a district, some equity principles. You also have your mission, vision, core values. We're not eliminating them and pushing them aside, but we are going to take a look at them through the process. But the new work, and the work that we're going to start in just a few moments, is to think about the portrait of a graduate. And so we're also going to identify goals and measures of student success, performance benchmarks, and then we'll go on into the instructional side and infrastructure. So I don't know if you were able to engage in the pre-reading, but we want to would love to spend the next 15 minutes to just have a more in-depth conversation to hear your thinking and your thoughts and ideas regarding the portrait of a graduate. So we have two quotes up here to kind of spark our thinking. On the left-hand side, we have a quote from Richard Riley, the former Secretary of Education, from nearly 20 some odd years ago, I think. But this quote that he stated was that we are currently preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist using technologies that haven't been invented in order to solve problems that we don't even know are problems yet. And there's one kind of thinking about what is the purpose, right, of education here. And then on the right-hand side, we have Howard Gardner, who's professor emeritus at this point, I think, at Harvard. So what is needed more than ever is a laser-like focus on the kinds of human beings that we are raising and the kinds of societies, and indeed a global era, the kind of world society that we are fashioning. I would love to hear, from you all, kind of what sparks, if either quote sparks or connects to you more, or if neither of them do, just kind of what comes up for you in hearing these in regard to thinking about how we're supporting or, helping grow all the students in the Centennial School District.
The one that hits me is the quote on the right, the laser-like focus into the kinds of human beings. When I think of the students that we have in our system, in our school district, I think of us as a community, and I think of us as a family, and I think of us as just wanting our kids and our students to go be good people out in the world. What a success is different for everyone. So, and people have different goals and different levels of success. And if our students feel that we have set them up for success, then we've done our due diligence.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, I agree. What resonates for me in the first one is that, trying to think of how to say this, wanting to foster that love of learning and that metacognition as opposed to just like, these are the facts that you need to know, here's this computer thing, here's this is how you do these math problems, so that we're preparing kids to be lifelong learners, because as we've seen how society evolves so quickly in the digital age, we want them to be able to adapt and evolve and not be stuck.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
I guess I'd kind of add with what Jess was saying, helping the student body, or raise students and children who are well balanced and also have that community focus, that they are a part of a community and that it so much is interconnected, and that we have a community, investment in these students, and it's not just whether they get good jobs, but whether they turn out to be civically minded, well-rounded individuals.
Right.
I'd like to piggyback on that, what you said just now, Director Lynn. I am keenly focused on academic excellence and achievement and equity. And with a big and probably many, many asterisks. With another hat I have, I'm in a healthcare area, and health equity outcomes are clearly not proportional by race. Also by class, but fundamentally by race. And I think we, as school teachers, people who are grooming future adults, need to help kids understand how to advocate for themselves medically. We need to ensure that they know what physical and mental and emotional health is like and how to achieve that. We need to, and I think I can't remember which school district it was, but it did say healthy relationships were a key outcome of kids' educations, and I firmly agree with that. So I feel like the whole society piece, that we do focus very well on academics. We need to continue to focus on that, but social outcomes are equally, or maybe in our case, you pointed out our demographics. So I've got to talk about this situation with a girl who graduated from Centennial, English language learner, and she wasn't even in her 20s yet, and she was having to advocate for her grandfather over here at the village because he didn't speak English, and they couldn't find someone to interpret. And we know that these kids who are English language learners frequently have to serve as interpreters for their families in an educational setting, but somehow we need to prepare those kids to be able to do that in a medical setting and in other types of settings, but medical particularly, because if you don't have health, if you don't have physical and emotional health, you can't achieve some of these other learning agility capabilities and academic type things. So anyway, I'm sorry, that was kind of long-winded, but I'm really passionate about this.
That's great, thank you. No, that's great. Anybody else want to chime in?
Along those same lines, a strategic plan lasts from 3 to 5 years depending, right? This board, this body at this time will be setting that. New members will be coming on. But we are recovering from a pandemic. And maybe this strategic plan is going to have to reflect some of what we need to do to recover. Mm-hmm. So when you were speaking, Director Andrews, about, especially the medical or the emotional needs, keep reading. I think it's in everything we read. Our news clips that we get from OSBA, almost every single time is focusing on the fact that our students have suffered greatly from the losses that they've experienced in the past 2 years. And so, maybe not related to these two statements, just related to our reality right now, is let's maybe think about pandemic recovery embedded within the structure of our strategic plan that will be in this period of the 3 to 5 years, because we've got to make that up, but it feels like we're gonna make up we're not making up just 2 years, we're making up maybe years and years. How far has it set our children and our students back? And I don't know that we know, but if we keep it as part of what of our focuses in this strategic plan, it'll keep it in our forefront, so that we'll continue to monitor it, if nothing else.
Thank you. Yeah. Just one note on that. Something that's different about this particular process or that we're engaging in with the building of the graduate portrait. We do invite the community to think of this as something that would stretch larger. So if you're designing for this year's kindergartners for 12 years from now, and it's a little bit of reading the tea leaves, right? But what are those really core competencies and the really core elements that we want to ensure that we're supporting their growth and development through the plan? And I also, so that's one element, that's sort of the more far-reaching vision piece. And I appreciate the attention to what's necessary now in terms of the goals for the plan itself, which is this 4-year plan, right? That's great. Do you want to chime in? Okay. All right. We'll go ahead. So the last, you kind of already did this. So by what you shared, I will give you the opportunity if you want to chime in some anything else about the portrait. We shared a couple of the article that kind of explained what the portrait is, but I'd love to hear if there's anything that stood out to you from the reading or any of the portraits that you reviewed. I heard a little bit about there was one that had that relationships and things, but if there's anything that you liked, and I'll put them up in just a minute, that either excites you about this idea of having a portrait of a graduate for the Centennial School District, or just any of the qualities or the samples that you thought were especially compelling or that you didn't like. That's always helpful, because part of this is, for me, we're not designing it here. It's a community-based process and all those pieces, but it gives me a sense, it gives us a sense of where, what are the things that really resonate with this board.
So I've been really trained in starting with the outcomes in mind, and so that's what kept coming to me when I was reading through these, is that we're wanting to start with the outcomes that we want to see and really building it from there. And the other thing I really liked is that the outcomes aren't just scholastic. They can be, we're really wanting to see the whole student in this process, and address the needs that way.
Thank you.
I loved this prompt for thinking. I really did. I mean, it just kind of focused me on what was important, and instead of just, wide-ranging here a bunch of things. But I thought it was great.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Can I go? I enjoyed the graduate profile piece. It gave a place to start thinking about it. Because, when I've been thinking about the school district strategic plan, I'm like, oh my, that sounds huge. And it is huge. And we're living with it for 5 years, 3 to 5. But it's a pretty important stuff. And so I liked this exercise in kind of start the mind going of what do we want.
Yeah.
And this might be a good example of something to do interactive at those community forums, so that the people from the community can have their input and we can use those as points and things to focus on. I know it was similar We did something similar in the facilities planning process.
Yep, that's great. Yeah.
Well, kind of like you were saying about addressing some of these things, I'm looking at the Shelby County example, and you see all these great things, just like we were just talking about, demonstrates civic responsibility, participates in the democratic process, and then, over on a responsible collaborator, does his or her part. So showing that kind of responsibility and duty to the community, I think is really nice. And although I just wonder, with all these things, you have, 40 bullet points here. They all seem great. And I wonder at the community forums, how can we point out the really big, important ones, or have people point them out? And maybe even where do they think, out of these 40 things, where are we falling behind? Where do we need to put the extra resources into, to check off the hard ones, not just get the easy ones, but the hard ones too.
Oh, that's great. That's a great idea. Thank you for bringing up the community engaged process with it. So everybody does the portrait. Every team, every group, everybody contributes. So all of those teams will be sharing. And in fact, your students already shared and suggested, and that will be part of our report, is what they thought was most important. We don't have them, we intentionally don't show too many models up front, because what we want to hear first is just from you. Like, what do you think as a parent? What do you think as a community member? What do you think as a student? And then from there, it begins to coalesce around what the community like where are we aligned as a community in terms of what's most important. So, so that's great. Yeah, I chuckled a little bit because that you counted those, because there are so many bullets. Yeah, there are. We would suggest that this is too many. Because part of what you would want to be doing with your portrait is thinking about how are you, paying attention to these things and students' growth and development over their course of, their years, potentially 13 years in the district, right, or more. So that's great, yeah. I know we started a little bit later, so I'm not going to have us go to, I'm cognizant of time, but I'd love to, if there's any other thoughts or comments on the portrait before we close out, I'd be happy to hear them. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to go on the opposite side of this. I think it's good to think about, but it also sets up an expectation sometimes where I can't be all of these things at this time in my life. And if this is what I'm supposed to be when I'm a graduate from Centennial High School, and I can't even make 10 of the 40, how does that make me feel?
Right.
And so the broader, I'm looking at a broader sense, because some of these things are important to our students at this next juncture in their life, and some of these are the adult expectations of what we want them to be.
Very good.
Whether they can see that for themselves or not, we can expose them. That doesn't mean they're going to be competent at it. So if we're talking about exposure, the 40 things, I think, yeah, that makes sense. But in terms of competency, I think that that's a different question.
Yeah.
And maybe we're answering those questions by assessments that the state requires us to do, et cetera. And it's not bad to set, lofty things, but don't set me up as a graduate to feel as though that's all the things I'm supposed to be and I can't see myself here yet. That doesn't feel very good.
Yeah.
So I'm a little concerned. That's what I got from this. And I've been an educator for a very long time, and I've done these processes, I can't tell you how many times. So I always get a little roll my eyes when I know that, and I teach at the community college level, and I see what comes in as a freshman, and I see what goes out as a sophomore, and the growth that we can see, right? But we meet the student at their point of need and to help them develop. This one says, this is what you're gonna be. It isn't necessarily true for everybody here. So I wish for us to be careful about what we say to our students. These are the things that you may want to consider. These are the places that you may want to think about going. But you don't have to be all things to all people. And a list of 40 is all things to all people for me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. No, and I think go ahead. Yeah.
No, I think that was great. And I think that we can be aspirational and let, set a bar high too. So the other thing I wanted to say, I really like in the article talking about building momentum. I think that oftentimes we talk about how are we going to motivate students, and that's one thing that I've been doing some reading on, is that transfer from motivation to momentum, and having the community come and help build that momentum so that they're not on their own to pluck out their motivation, pull up from their bootstraps, right? It's like we're all here together moving forward, and they're part of the momentum.
Great. Very good. Yeah. Yes, sir.
If I could, not specifically on the graduate profiles, but those 3 questions at the end got me thinking. And I don't want to disparage the work that your firm does and the fact that we're redoing the strategic plan, the new one. But to me, I see 2 elements, and I'm not an educator by background either, but 2 elements. Parents being invested in their students' education and showing an interest. I was fortunate in my upbringing, if you'll pardon the personal reference. We had the old-fashioned report cards, handwritten with the comments from the teacher. Before they signed it, my folks read every single one of those. And they were interested, and we knew that they were interested in education. And parents were invested in it, not just leaving it all to schools. As great as Centennial is and has the capacity to become, they can't do everything. We just simply cannot. And the parents have to be supportive, invested in their students. And then the students themselves, not only the best practices, everything we've discussed is important, but creating within that desire to learn, the curiosity, the thirst for learning. You know, if you'll pardon something kind of a down-to-earth illustration, the old cliche about leading a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But if you make him thirsty enough, he or she, they will. You make students, you encourage that curiosity and stimulate it and let them see that it can be a component for success. It can help you later in life, and you retain that lifelong curiosity to want to learn. Then I think we've done our job. The one question, what would make you proud as a parent or a community member, and I took that one to heart, that the students would be able to make meaningful contributions both at their workplace and in the community.
That's great. Thank you.
I want to just, I think that when we talk about equity, like, I think we need to look at all aspects. And so, like, yes, it's great. We want parents involved. But, back in the day, there was probably a parent at home most of the time and all of these things. And when you look at our statistics, when we have 12 out of 20 students living in poverty, oftentimes there's not a parent home, right? And so that's that piece of how do we, as a district, provide the same experience in education for those youth who don't come with that as for those who do.
Thank you. That's great. All right. Well, I really appreciate everyone's thoughts and contributions. I took my own notes, but I think that Director Callahan gets the prize for taking the most notes and then recording everything. So this is great. This is an initial conversation. It gives you a taste of the kind of discussion that your community is going to be having in each of the teams and through the process. We're not going for everybody to have the same perspective. We want to be embracing the unique and diverse perspectives of everyone in the community to move forward. So we're excited, and I'm looking forward to being back here in just a couple weeks to kick things off. So,
Thank you so much for joining us.
yeah, my pleasure.
At this point, let's take a 10-minute recess. We'll adjourn for now, and we'll re-meet in 10 minutes, 8:10. Do not jinx us. All right, it's 8:10 and the school board meeting is back in session. Thank you all for your promptness. Next up, we've got the, what do we got here? Oh, confirmation items, confirmed en masse. Can I get a motion?
Move that we approve the confirmation items.
Second.
Is there any discussion that needs to happen on these items? Right, all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous, the confirmation items have been passed en masse. Coming up to board action items. Let's see here, old business. No old business, but we've got some new business. Dr. Kasuda?
We might want Director Southerton up for wing person.
Okay, first item under new business is the administrator's agreement. It's a Centennial School District. It's recommended that the board ratify the contract between the administrators and the Centennial School District effective July 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2025.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Excellent. Are there any questions, concerns, comments before we take a vote? Great. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. The administrator's employment agreement has been approved.
Wonderful, thank you. The next item is the agreement with the support services supervisors, chief communications officer, executive assistants, department head assistants, department heads, and technology director in the school district. So it's recommended that the board ratify the contract agreement between the district and those employee groups.
Thank you.
I'll just point out that in this one and the next one, you'll see that there was an update today of those agreements. The update changes were
Thank you.
the titles of the positions, because some of the titles of the positions have evolved over the last 3 years. And so those were reflected. For example, support services directors used to be support services supervisors. So Dr. Katsuda had gone in the last few days and made the updates relative to updating the proper position titles. And then the other thing that was updated in the last few days was making the pronouns gender neutral or gender inclusive. And so that was done as well. We just wanted to make sure the board was aware that it was updated today, but those were the changes. There wasn't anything that was like snuck in or anything.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
that.
Motion to approve support services for and supervisor employment agreement.
I'll second.
Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Raise your hand and say aye. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous, it's been approved.
All right, last but not least, it's recommended that the board ratify the contract agreement between Centennial School District and the non-union trades. Dated for this school year and the next couple of school years, July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2025.
Excuse me. Thank you very much.
Motion to approve the non-union trade employment agreement as presented.
Comments or questions?
Yes.
Go, please.
Just for my own clarification, I wasn't clear what confidential 1 and confidential 2, I'm not, what types of positions that refers to.
Those are different classifications of staff who work with directors who are in charge of confidential employment matters. So for example, someone who works with me would be a confidential staff member.
Okay, thank you.
The confidential positions are specifically confidential to is Shannon Burley in Human Resources. She's a confidential assistant. And then we have an open position that has been open for some time, which is the confidential one position. And they would provide additional support in human resources, but it doesn't have quite the level of complexity of Shannon's position as a confidential two.
And they would be staff members who would, like I said, be working with a lot of confidential information pertaining to employees, from health matters to employment matters and benefit matters.
Thank you for the clarification.
Great. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you.
Future agenda items.
All right, I've got quite the list. So we've got an introduction for an assistant principal for Park Lane. We were able to get that position established. And then we also, as you saw in the announcement that was shared yesterday, former Superintendent Breyer is joining us as a Associate Director for Human Resources on a part-time basis. So we're pleased to have his involvement back in the district, and he'll be introduced at the next meeting. Summer School Quarterly Report. Or excuse me, I conflated. Summer school report. We had summer school happen, and a lot of good things happen, and the high school is excited to share about that, and so we'll have that report coming up. Not sure it'll be at the next meeting, but it's on the horizon. The bond quarterly report was intended to be tonight, but we decided to move that just because we wanted to dedicate more of our attention to the strategic planning tonight. So we'll have the bond quarterly report at the November meeting. We'll also have the facilities plan update committee report. Remember, we had the three meeting series with regard to the additional funds that were, or the surplus funds that were available. And so the facilities plan update committee report, and I believe, Director Southerton, correct me if I'm wrong, that we'll have some project approval related to that for the board's consideration relative to the recommendations that were established by that committee. We also have the student investment account annual progress report that is upcoming. And so that needs to be addressed to the board. We also have construction manager and general contractor for stadium improvements, I believe, that we'll be looking at in November. Budget committee interviews, provided we have budget committee applications, we've really been trying to promote. So if you know anybody who's interested, we've extended that deadline a little bit.
More than one position? Two.
Do we have applications?
We have one. Who, of a retired member going off that wants to come back on? Am I wrong?
No, I think Berta's term was up, and so she just applied. She's re-upping, so there's still two vacant. But it's still two vacant.
Outside of, okay.
I was confused.
Indeed.
Thank you for the clarification. So the board had previous vacancies, it was our practice that the current member wanted to leave, we would allow that. The board expressed interest in having members apply again. So we are asking here that the board will have an opportunity.
And then we have screening of board member applications, and we have a handful so far.
Yep. We've got 3 great candidates.
So that is next, or that is all I have for next future agenda items.
Fantastic.
Along the lines of the school board candidates, we've been through this now a couple of times, and we've also lost members for a variety of reasons. And I think part of the challenge is that, and maybe Director Gregory can speak to this as our newest board member, is really what is the role of a board member, and what's the responsibilities of a board member, and what's the time commitment. And we've lost 2 board members who've expressed the time commitment has been a challenge for them. And I don't want these 3 candidates coming in here and not understanding that responsibility. So what I'd like to suggest is that we talked about this in our August retreat as well, about onboarding. Well, there maybe need to be an onboarding prior to your interviewing to be as a candidate. And that onboarding could include things like the list of all of the board meetings, all of the budget meetings, and now with our unique circumstance this year of strategic planning and the responsibilities that these individuals may need to experience as well as want to experience. Asking them about if there are barriers that, that might keep them from participating. Asking them what research they have done on their own to figure out what it is to be a board member. And then offer them links to the publicly available training that OSBA has on their website. There's no barrier to that training. It's right there, as long, if you know to go look. And the challenge is I don't know that candidates would know to go look. And so if we could provide that information to them up front prior to them actually coming here, they're coming here with a little bit more knowledge and understanding about the duties and responsibilities. Because once you take this on, it's nice if we can keep somebody to do it, albeit this position will only be for, 8 or 9 months? Because this vacant position is up for election in 2020, or it would be because of the vacancy when it was declared. They will have to apply, or they'll have to become a candidate for the remaining part of the term. I've written out just kind of what I just said. I'd be willing to write it up and provide it to either our chair or to our chair and our superintendent, just so they would know. Because I think we need to be a little bit more robust in our questioning of our candidates. Because you can kind of get away with being kind of light on your responses. Although I will say, Director Gregory, I really appreciated when you were interviewed, how you had at least made the attempt to watch some of the board meetings. You were able to speak to what we had been doing. And I appreciated that you acknowledged some of the you could see the culture of this board, which is, that we work together, we have differences of opinion, but we respected those differences of opinion, and you spoke to that. So when you were interviewed, I really appreciated that. I felt as though you had a base understanding of what was going on, but I would certainly like to help our other candidates with at least a minimum of information with public availability of training. So I'm willing to pull that together if that is okay with the board, but I don't want to do anything that.
No, I think that's fantastic. Is there any issue with me doing like a screening with them before we, to go over that information?
Real quick, just a little aside, thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate the opportunity to interview. I enjoyed it, and the opportunity now to serve, and looking forward to the rest of the journey. Thank you.
We have done that in the past, and I'm talking about previous chairs who have worked with candidates that are coming in, even people who are on the the ballot for election as well. So that is and has been a practice. So however we could communicate, or your time and your comfort with that, I could pull this together and send it at least for the board to review in case they wanted to add additional information, or they thought anything that I might have said was maybe not appropriate at this stage. But I can pull that together and at least get it out to everybody so that could support you.
That would be so fantastic.
Okay.
I'm happy to be a resource for any potential candidates.
Great.
If you want to reach out, like, what am I signing up for?
Yeah.
'Cause it would be better for them to know that.
Perfect.
Director Lynn.
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, I would just add my only concern is because it sounds like a great idea, and we do want, of course, we want board members who have a realistic expectation of what they're getting into. I just don't want it to be phrased in a way where people pre-screen themselves out who might be quick learners or have a quick learning curve, because we do want to cast the biggest net of diversity in our community and people. So I want people to not be too scared to volunteer, and know that while there's all these supports and resources, we also are a collaborative board who will help a new board member get up to speed. If they're feeling a little uncomfortable or on the fence about it, I hope they feel like they can still take that jump.
No, I think that, I appreciate that, and I think that the what you were mentioning really gets down to the, um, can they see themselves in this role too? And I think that that's, they need to be aware of, yeah, all of those things. And I'm a Pollyanna. I'm going to encourage them to keep, that they can do it, right? So, but I do think that that's, and maybe we can have you, like you said, send it out, send what you write up to the board so that we'll all be able to look at that and ensure.
I'll make sure that I send it to Superintendent Owen so that it can be distributed to the district office, whatever thing is. But along those same lines, if a person says, oh, gosh, I didn't really know that was, the calendar is just too much, irrespective, but then it gives us the opportunity to say, oh, but we have a budget committee. Would you be willing to, start with the budget committee? Because many of us as board members have come through the budget committee into board work. So, it's like, okay, and now that you see it, and you just say, oh, I'm not sure, well, would you be willing to do that? Or if we could plug someone who has already shown interest, right? They've applied, that's a big deal. That all of these things that are coming up in the strategic planning, it sounds like these are individuals too that we might want to reach out to and to see if we can plug them in. I'm pointing at the list of all those committees that we have. It's like, ooh, if you can't see yourself there, can you see yourself with one of these? Because we really value your input. So I just will hope we can bring them in.
Yeah, and I hope on the reverse that we've also made just a specific reaching out to the budget committee members to make sure that they are all aware that there is a board member vacancy. So they don't say like, oh, I missed it, nobody told me, kind of thing.
We'll do that.
Awesome.
As it relates to the strategic planning and Superintendent Owens, when you sent out that hefty list of all of our work groups and liaisons, it does not, I do not see Director Gregory on that list. And if we need to update you on all of those kinds of things, I'd like to make sure that we take the opportunity to do so. But I would also like to ask, and I think Director Callahan was saying that from her office, we're going to be putting together calendaring for all of these things, and that if we could put that in as required for the board members who said, yes, by golly, I'm going to be there, and those of us who are not, quote, signed up for it, be optional, knowing that if we were to attend, that we're observers, we're not participants, because we do have assigned liaisons to each of these. But if you see yourself as required and you go, uh-oh, I won't be able to do that for whatever reason, maybe one of the people who've said, well, I'm a maybe, or I'm optional, I could step in and help if that's necessary. But I'd certainly like to see that happen.
Fine balance, because you want to have backups, but we got to watch out for the forums.
Actually, we do not, because we're not decision-making bodies when we attend these functions. We are there to observe. Now, as a role as a liaison where we are a participant, then that would be true. We couldn't have 4 or more participants. But if I wanted to attend every single one of these meetings as just, I'm an observer to the process, I'm an observer to the process. I'm not and besides, these are not decision-making bodies. These are learning, right? Input. And so we are not under any obligation to worry about the forum. If we could all make it, I think that would even be better, wouldn't it?
I think that also is a great suggestion. I was hoping that maybe we could talk about it during board coffees, but I'm not sure if that's gonna work for you. So maybe, is that something that you might be able to do, meet with Director Gregory and go over that list of committees and see what he might be interested in joining? Go ahead.
And what we will need is, in the district office board members, it doesn't have our email, so I will have to touch base and get your email so that I'll be able to, pull that together for you.
confessed to the chair a few minutes ago on the break that I opted out of the DO email tree and error. My streaming experience, the first week I was going over, and I had a huge amount in the Gmail feed, and I opted out of it, and I didn't really intend to do that. That one's pretty important, so it's probably why I'm not getting the things about the various, because of that. So I think once I'm back on the tree, that should sort itself out. Then I can see what works. I could at least be a observer, if nothing else.
I just passed that note over to James to get that fixed up. And then is your email, is it specifically for Centennial, or is it like you're all?
General Gmail account, everything I do goes to it. I'm not very high tech. I don't sort by categories. I don't spend hours over it. Just anything that comes in, I read it. So that's the best one to use.
My recommendation would be, if you're interested, to have a new Gmail account that's just board, so that you can click on it and see pretty easily. I mean, I think I've added mine. I just put Centennial in my name with Gmail. And so that would be my recommendation, but we can talk about offline.
We talked about OSB, the OSBA's convention that's coming up this November, oh gosh darn, I can't remember the dates. Anyway, thank you, 7, 12, 13. I'm able to attend on Friday, but not able to attend on Saturday. Don't ask me why, Jess knows. Rose and David are also signed up. I was noting in the email communication that we received that we can still register people through October 30th if they wish to be registered. If people cannot attend for any reason, we need to let them know, or else we get charged the full freight for the registration. But they will there's like a cancellation fee of $50 if we cancel. They just need to know so that they can make appropriate counts. So, since I'm not going to be able to go on Saturday, if someone would like to be Pam on Saturday, let me know.
I take you up on that, because I'm on call that Thursday, Friday, so I cannot go, but that's Saturday.
But you're Saturday, okay. So, we could do something like that, Sherry. Thank you.
Director Lynn?
Calendar says REAP night on the 9th. On that?
Principal Miller, can you speak to this?
What
Will
is
you
it?
come up and share with us?
So as you guys know, REAP is one of our community partners, especially reaching out to some of our students that are disenfranchised or need different connections, and probably one of our stronger community partnerships. And so we're really excited because November 9th, they're having REAP Night. If you go to our newsletter, you can actually see a video they produced about REAP Parent Night, but they're inviting all the parents in our community to come in, learn more about the program. We're also going to have several community partners there besides REAP as well. And so you're all invited to come. I'll make sure you get the email and the invite, but it should be an exciting time. They're excited to be sharing. They've already started different programs, so students will be sharing their experiences, inviting people to learn more about REAP and some of the other community partnerships that we have.
November 9th.
Don't we have a board meeting that night?
We did.
Yeah, I've noticed that there's been a few times that I've been like, oh, like tonight I was like, I could totally do the trunk or treat over at the high school. And I'm like, no, I can't. I've got board meeting. But we're with student council in spirit and with REAP as well.
Awesome. You know, we could always end the school boards a little earlier and then go to some of these events. Or you could hold the meetings over there, and then we could go over and go to the events as well.
Love it. Yeah. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, this meeting is adjourned at 8:35.